It is very auspicious that we could begin the practice of the bodhicitta today on the new year of the 2018. Many years have passed and many more years to come. And one thing that one has to be able to count on is count on oneself to be able to live well and live well with the good health and wishing for good health is very common and reasonable. Live well with the love and support of the family. Is very common and very reasonable. Live well with the $1 billion. Aspiration. And it's very common. And it's very reasonable as well. But live well with the principle of bodhicitta. Right away, it is not, first of all, common. Second, it is not, doesn't often sounds or seems reasonable. But if you look at your overall life, not just for the moment, for the time being, what's happening with your mind, what's happening with your emotions, what's happening with your situation, which maybe is requiring oneself to act or do something in contrary to the bodhicitta practice. For example, a mosquito lands on your arm. And mosquito is certainly intending to have a bite of you. And mosquito is certainly not only have an intention to bite of you, but mosquito also could actually, in a certain places like India or Brazil or different other places, where actually it could be dangerous. You could have a dengue fever, you could have malaria, you could have that other one. What is that other one? Zika. You could have many problems. So it's not only just intending to have a bite of you, but it could be a threat to one's own life. Recently, one of my very, very old good friend, he was in Delhi, and recently he just finished a 3 years, 2-3 years retreat. And so in the retreat, he came to realize that he has a high blood pressure. And I mean, he's generally very active. He's one of those monks who are like a football player by built, very, very strong. So what they told him is that, you know, he wasn't moving much in the retreat. Of course, you don't move. You are staying in bed most of the time. So he needed to do exercise. So in Delhi, there is not many places where you could do exercise. He was staying in my brother's place. And so he made a friend. And a friend was the head of the community where in the next block, there is a small park. And this is a good neighborhood, not like a neighborhood that usually we stay. This is a good neighborhood. So he got a permission to go into the park and do exercise. So every morning he was really trying to take care of his health, particularly blood pressure. He wasn't ill or anything like that. He was exercising, which he's not used to. He's exercising every day with all those, gym things that is in the park. And then one morning he just thought, oh, something bit me. And then he wasn't quite sure what it was. But then he didn't care about it. And then he came back. And then that evening, he couldn't get up. All his body was paralyzed, so to speak. He couldn't move. He was so much in pain. So immediately, then they took him to a hospital. And if you know earlier, it is a dengue fever. Then you could do some things to take care of it. So anyway, for 3 or 4 months he was very sick, but he got better. Another monk similarly got dengue fever and then didn't take care of it and died. So just as a small bite can actually be that kind of a threat to you, but the principle of the bodhicitta is that most probably a good Mahayana practitioner, even in such conditions, would not kill the mosquito. Would just shoo the mosquito away, or just try to put as much as possible a repellent on the body. So it's not that there isn't an intention, not that there isn't a threat, but one wouldn't. Why? Because mosquito is a living being as well. And mosquito, just as you are trying to live and survive, and to have a sort of some kind of a means to live and survive, mosquito is trying to sort of have that also. And most of the time mosquitoes bite is not that dangerous, or it's not at all that dangerous. Once we were staying in a Machunugadila in Delhi, and I wanted to know the students how it is to live in India and how it is for most of the people, and how it is to grow up and have a little bit of a experience of the the roughness, especially with Dungsela, when he was just first started to go there with us as a group. We stayed in a Machunugadila, nice room, and in the morning everybody's face was swollen with so many bites all over. But it was fine. It was fine. So the thing is, if you give into the thoughts and fear and emotions, and if you give into the reactions, most probably it's not going to take any effort for us to just squash a mosquito. And most probably we all have squashed many mosquitoes before in that way. But that is not who we are as a Buddhist or particularly a Mahayanan Bodhicitta practitioner. Now coming to the path of the Mahayana, coming to knowledge of the Bodhicitta, coming to the wisdom of respecting each living beings in its own rights to live. Just like you yourself have the rights to live, and you yourself are trying your best to live for the happiness and joy and try to achieve that. You yourself are trying to live free of suffering and pain and try to get rid of the suffering and pain. Every living beings have that rights. When the Jefferson wrote all men are created equal, all men are created equal, I take that as in a sort of a basic living being's rights to pursue happiness and joy and to be able to live free of suffering and pain. That right is the rights of all living beings to be able to pursue the path of enlightenment, a perfect freedom and a perfect state of bliss. Not created by God, so to speak, as an external force, but by the nature of our living beings. That is their own nature, that is their own true disposition. To be one day enlightened. So, that respect only can come from Samsung ki Sherab. Samsung ki Sherab is, there's the hearing wisdom. Hearing wisdom is what you hear of the Bodhicitta teachings and what resonates with you. And you feel that's all very good. But Samsung ki Tuzung ki Sherab versus Samsung ki Sherab. Difference between hearing wisdom versus contemplative wisdom. Contemplative wisdom is what you yourself analyze, what you have heard. Not only just resonates in just hearing, but you have come to a conclude yourself, this is truth. This is truth that I want to live by. This is the truth that I want to abide. This is the truth that I would follow best as possible with my body, speech, and mind's actions. And having the sense of a resolution and the sense of the deep conviction to be resoluted. Not only just when we feel like, but when we don't feel like, also to live by that principle. When we are challenged, and when we are provoked, and when we are deeply distressed, by our own reactions and by our own emotions and by our own habits, as well as the conditions of that being plentifully arose in one's life. Only when you can hold on to your principles in that way, then you could actually say, that's my view, that's my belief, that's my path, that's my core sort of value. So in that, then when actually you are able to, for example, in the case of a mosquito landing on you, with an intention to get a bite of you, or it could be a dangerous to threat even your life, you wouldn't kill the mosquito. You wouldn't hurt the mosquito. Eye for an eye makes the world blind. And especially a mosquito, what mosquito is doing to you, and what you're doing to mosquito in comparison. What you could do to mosquito, or what mosquito could do to you, not in this specific cases, but in general, is outrageously using your strength and position, and as well as also power, to do something to the mosquito that is not going to be fair. Oh, that's even not the point. The point is that you wouldn't want to harm any. You wouldn't want to harm any. You would rather sort of use as much as possible mosquito repellent, or as much as wear your clothes, or even then run away from the mosquito, as to not lose yourself in the emotions and the reactions and then the harm. It's not harming of the mosquito there then. It's harming of your principles. And once you harm your own principles in that way, then where do you stand? Becomes a very difficult to know. And how can you stand all with any principles. If always one is making exceptions to the principles. So in that way, as the Mahatma Gandhi, as well as also many of the great, even in our lifetimes, like His Holiness Dalai Lama, as well as also Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, non-violence has to be non-violence, unconditionally, not with a condition and closet for violence. But that doesn't mean to say that you be absolutely somehow passive either, or condoning any wrongdoings in the world. In the Buddhist teachings, as His Holiness has explained and as Shantideva has explained over and over, you could actually, like a mother or father, be critical of our child's action, but does not lose the affection to the child. Or does not, while being critical of the child and saying your action is wrong, you are still coming from love and care to the individual. And you are still preserving the love and care. Once you lose that love and care, while being critical or while being conclusive of what somebody has done that is wrong, then you have to exclude the person completely from your bodhicitta practice. And if you exclude the person from your bodhicitta practice, then how could your bodhicitta practice be whole? As a whole, you have to have all living beings included in your bodhicitta practice. And if you exclude anyone, even as anyone such as we know who we are talking about, it jeopardizes your bodhicitta practice. And it's the responsibility. It's the responsibility of the practitioner to specifically include the person while opposing to the policies and the actions of the person. And that is the principle of the bodhicitta, and never in any way intend harm to the person. Even harm is being brought to you. As Shantideva points out, if one who brings a harm to you and you in return bring a harm to the person, how then you could ever say that you have the practice of patience, or practice of tolerance, or practice of the bodhicitta to carry you through in your life and the lifetimes to come? It doesn't mean that there's no challenge, but the very reasons why it is very challenging, therefore the practice of the patience is very powerful. Practice of the tolerance is very, very powerful. It purifies so much of our own negativities of the past. And no one is free of negativities from the past. Even one lives like a saint in this life, who knows how many of our negativities that we have engaged in the past lives. In one area we have lived very well, but in many other areas, how we have maybe not lived so well. Negativity is a negativity. Karma of being a negative, and negative karma having to be bad and resulted on you is going to be there. And there is no, as it is stated, that patience and the tolerance is the greatest ways to purify the negativity of the past. So as also of the environment, so as also of the world. So in this way, really not losing one's bodhicitta care and affection towards all living beings. And making sure that one doesn't lose that. Where it's threatened by one's own emotions, reactions, habits, and plentiful cause and conditions of that being in the world. As Ashantideva states, you cannot cover the whole world with a leather. It's impossible. But you could wear shoes and it will work to not have any sharp objects cut you. So in this way, to not react with one's own emotions and the habits and the conditions being plentiful in one's life and in the environment, only wisdom can protect that. Wisdom can protect that. That of the wisdom of not hearing, that of the wisdom of your contemplative, Samsung ki sherab. And you have to use your Samsung ki sherab, however difficult and however challenging it is to use your Samsung ki sherab or contemplative wisdom in situations and in times. Think about how much Nelson Mandela had to use his Samsung ki Sharap. Think about how much Martin Luther King had to use his Samsung ki Sharap. Think about how much Mahatma Gandhi had to use his Samsung ki Sharap. Think about how much His Holiness Dalai Lama has to use Samsung ki Sharap every single day of his living in this situation and in these conditions. It's not categorically to think that these people are very special people. These people are very unique people. These people are beyond and above and some kind of like a saintly person and beings. And we are not like that. And then separate yourself and make a gap to support one's own indulgence in one's own emotions and reactions and habits. It's a time to really be inspired and time to really know how did they do. What they did. How did they come to have such a strength? Is it like they're free of emotions? Is it like they're free of habits? Is it like they're free of reactions? They're just cut from a different cloth altogether? Or is it something that we have a common, and that commonality is something that we are not using ourselves to grow inside of us and strengthen and thus become stronger and stronger and get to a place of same kind of resiliences. I don't believe that any of these great beings are cut from a different cloth. I don't believe that they don't have the emotions. I don't believe that they don't have the reactions. I don't believe that they don't have the habits. Maybe they don't have as much as we have because we have always indulging. But they do certainly have. But the reason that they are not succumb to them is by their principles. And by their not principles that they have read in the books or that they have heard from the teachers or that they have lightly thought of in their lives, but they have deeply contemplated, particularly in their own lives, in their own conditions, and in their own situations, how to proceed forward. And thus have come to a place of a resolution, place of a deep conviction, place of a great depth of a clarity. And then thus they stay there with a 100% commitment to stay there, even cost of their life. Which is their principle of non-violence with no conditions. even in the course of their own lives. People may not be happy, but that is not the reason for them to change. Mahatma Gandhi died because of Natulal being upset about his policies of non-violence in the partition. They wanted more riots and more killing to fuel the aggression. And only one who could actually stop that is Gandhiji's fast. And Gandhiji going to the point of almost coma to stop the violence between Hindus and Muslims in the partition time, and the riots got stopped. And then just as he was healing, those who were wanting to fuel this got Natulal to kill Gandhiji. So as also Martin Luther King. The threats and dangers were there, and that is not that they backed down. Luckily, so far, nothing has happened to His Holiness. Nothing has happened to Mandela other than being in prison for some 20 years. But principle is not something that you actually trade with any threat or any conditions being somewhat negative towards you personally. Such conviction in the non-violence and the particularly, again, more so than a non-violence here, for bodhicitta and for the bodhicitta practice, there has to be even more. There has to be even more than just non-violence. There has to be that bodhicitta love and that bodhicitta care and the bodhicitta affection has to be generated against the people that might be harm to you or that might be a very reason that you might lose the bodhicitta in order to preserve the bodhicitta itself, as well as also in order to live by the principle of bodhicitta. And there is nothing greater of a strength than that of the bodhicitta love and bodhicitta kindness and bodhicitta compassion being able to preserve and feel equally for loved ones as well as to all that is perhaps you are so-called conventionally enemies. For the bodhisattvas, there is no enemies, only loved ones. Enemies are only a projection of others and what they may do. So, imagine having that kind of like a equanimity. Imagine that kind of like a warmth that is indestructible. Imagine that kind of like sense of loving kindness and compassion. Imagine that kind of a sense of tolerance. Imagine that kind of a sense of resilience. Imagine that kind of a sense of power, top. There is no really any greater qualities than the qualities of that principle of the bodhicitta. That very hard felt resolutions of the bodhicitta. Someone who is wandering around as a beggar with that kind of a bodhicitta in their heart, no place particularly to dwell or live, no particular food or clothing or any conditions of living well, or no companion particularly or support system of living, like a friends or family or anyone like that. Versus a king or queen or prince or princess or anyone between who is really free in the heart, who is really happy in the heart, who is really to have a joy, and who is to really have a great sense of no fear, no threat. It's going to be the beggar, not the king, not the queen. It's not going to be anyone in between. It's going to be the beggar. Why? Because of that kind of bodhicitta and the principles of the bodhicitta and being able to live by the principles of the bodhicitta. Therefore, many of the great sages in the past have chose to abandon kingdom, abandon monastery, abandon their flocks of followers and disciples, and become a beggar and be wandering, because it gave them that kind of a freedom and peace and joy. In the places of being a king or queen or high lama on a throne or any kind of politicians within a power and positions, did not support the bodhicitta practice that easily. Being a beggar and wandering supported that. It was not that they became beggar or wandering because of some novelty. It is because of what they believe is the bodhicitta. And the highest practice of all. The greatest penicillin of all illness of the mankind is easy to be practiced in that position. And like a Patu Rinpoche, so Patu Rinpoche was asked to be head of the Dzogchen monastery many times, refused. Not only refused, but didn't take the necessary vows to become a Khenpo and head of the Dzogchen monastery. So, many years comes from now. Many years have came and went. If our resolutions could be more firmer and more stronger and more clear and more truly as an unshakable resolution to practice the bodhicitta and abide by the principles of the bodhicitta, we can find that kind of a peace. We can find that kind of a joy. We can find that kind of a strength. We can find that kind of a resilience. We can find that kind of an indestructible love and care, warmth, and affection for all mankind and all living beings. We can find that kind of in a sense of enlightenment of our own, within in our own hearts. In the good days ahead of us, and more so in the troubled days ahead of us. Thus, in this life, bodhicitta will save us, and then in the lifetimes, bodhicitta will save us. Not just in the heart, but in our own actions to be not harmful and hurtful and wrongdoing, that we ultimately have to endure the result of that. There is not going to be a, therefore, endurance of hardships in this life. It's only going to be from this life on, from this point on, a purification of the past wrongdoings. And in the next life, for most people, where one is going to be born is uncertain. Where one is going to be born and what kind of a life and experience you will have to endure is uncertain. You could be rich, it doesn't follow you. You could be powerful, it doesn't follow you. You could be intelligent, and you could be wise in a conventional sense, but it doesn't follow you. You could have very many loving friends and family, it doesn't follow you. One's life from this earth, from this world into the next, is uncertain, depending on much more so than what next karma, the strongest karma, the most perpetuated karma, the state of the mind, how one exits from this world. And what has been the earliest or recent karma. Those four factors are going to determine where one is going to be born. And no one knows most of the time what that is. But I can be 100% sure that if you practice bodhicitta and keep on practicing bodhicitta and does not lose the bodhicitta's love and care and the affection for all living beings and the respect for all living beings, and abide by the principles with your Samsung Sherab, how all living beings are equal. And what virtue is and what non-virtue is, based on how much you could avoid harming and how much you could instead avoiding not only avoiding but as well do all your best to extend yourself to others in the body, speech, and mind, and particularly in the mind, as this is the time of growing shoots from the seed. That you will not go to a place of unfavorable world and unfavorable life to be assumed, and unfavorable suffering to fall upon you. And that could be assured. And that's in your hand. In that we are not talking about some very small matters and some very kind of insignificant matters that sort of like affects your hair color or that affects your life in a small manners. We are talking about rest of our existence. Nothing in this world can be talked about that could assure your rest of existence to be good and positive and favorable and truly progressive and truly enlightening and truly blissful and truly peaceful, truly joyful, truly rewarding, truly meaningful than the practice of the bodhicitta. Let alone $1 billion, not $1 trillion in whatever more dollars, could not achieve that. And this is within in your reach. This is within in your grasp. This is within in your already heart, that you could find yourself to enshrine. Your heart being a temple, bodhicitta is to be enshrined in your heart as a temple. That will illuminate not your heart and your mind and your being, but that in time will illuminate the whole world. All the Tathagatas of the past is a result of the bodhicitta. All the Tathagatas of the present is the result of the bodhicitta. All the Tathagatas in the future is the result of the bodhicitta. All not the Tathagatas, but any great bodhisattvas, any great masters, any great sages. Not only that, any great leaders, any great achievers has come from, as Nagarjuna has pointed out, as a result of this bodhicitta practice in the praise of the bodhicitta. So, not just hearing it, but today is the day that you have to come to a point of not just hearing it, but coming to embrace the vow and embrace the principle of the bodhicitta practice in mind and soul and in actions. To never be forsaking that, even in the risk of one's own life. And thus, the new year resolution will be one of the greatest among many greatest resolutions that is ever been made by anyone, not just yourself, but anyone in the human world.